This episode is sponsored by Realtor.com, who wants you to take advantage of your free profile on Realtor.com. By claiming and completing your free profile, adding a photo, and all of the information that puts you head and shoulders above the competition, you're on your way to receiving free leads, helping search engines find you, and staying top of mind with past clients. To learn more about claiming your free profile, go to Realtor.com/profile.
Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Real View podcast. I am your host, Allison Wiley. Joining me today, he is no stranger to the Ohio Realtors world. He has joined us on many occasions at many different events. I would like to welcome back to Ohio Realtors, but first time on the Real View podcast, Rob Hahn. He is the founder and managing partner of 7DS Associates. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And what a pleasure to be on. When did you guys start RealView? This is such a great idea.
Oh, thanks so much. We started at the very end of 2020. I think it was right before the new year.
Oh, right on.
So 2.5-ish going on 3 years.
Right on.
Yeah. And it's been fun. It's been great. And I think people enjoy it. So, but having guests like you join me just makes it that much better. So I appreciate you coming on.
No, hey, look, the way I look at it, we live in a podcast world now, right? Where Joe Rogan is probably the most important journalist in the country. So I'm so glad to see institutions like Ohio Realtors doing your own podcast and, kind of getting the message out there. So great. What a pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it. And you're coming on today to give us a little preview, a little insight into what you are going to be talking about at the upcoming Broker Summit that's going to be coming around the corner here really quickly. And we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to preview.
We do.
We're not going to give it all away because we want this to encourage, our members and our listeners to join us at this Broker Summit. But we're gonna hear a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah. So I think, and I'm sort of known for this, right? I'd like to say that and Ohio Realtors has been incredibly courageous in inviting me over and over and over again, because I'd like to say that I'm the best because I'm the only demotivational speaker in real estate. Because I like to point out some things that we just don't talk about very much, right? As you know, look, real estate industry, we tend to emphasize the positive. We tend to emphasize the hustle, to go get them, because it's like sort of the nature of a sales-oriented job. And I totally get that. And I respect the hell out of it. But one of the negatives of it is that we sometimes overlook serious problems that are kind of lurking out there. And we don't want to talk about them openly. But in this case, I think the issues are so serious, so dire, especially for brokers, that you guys made the wise decision to have me come and sort of talk about it. Specifically, we're going to talk about the commission lawsuits. And who knows, by the time I'm out there speaking, what else could have changed, because, the settlement, the Realogy settlement just, they started talking about that this week. Mm-hmm. So these things are changing very, very fast. But I do think that we're not talking about some of the very serious implications of what this means specific for brokers. So let me give you kind of a high-level overview of what I'm going to address. At this point, I think it's safe to say that most people in real estate are starting to become aware that these lawsuits are happening. And these lawsuits are essentially alleging that cooperation and compensation, right, the practice of the seller paying the commission to the listing broker and the listing broker sharing that with the buyer broker, right, that practice is anti-competitive and is a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. And what I think for the last 3 years, what agents and brokers have been arguing about is like whether that's right or wrong. And I'm like, look, none of us are lawyers. Like, you're making policy arguments. It almost doesn't matter what we think about it. What matters is what the jury and what the judge is going to say matters, right? So to some extent, I feel like the last 3 years have been spent, I'll say, a little bit less than productive, where agents talk about, how could this possibly be? Because, I have a contract with the seller. I'm like, look, I get it. I totally get it. But fact is, unless you are one of the lawyers arguing in front of the court, our opinions around that doesn't matter. More recently, I think as these lawsuits continue not going away, right? NAR keeps losing motions to dismiss, summary judgment motions. And now the trial is right in front of our face. In fact, I think by the time I come out and speak, the trial will either already have started or it's the week before trial. I think more and more people are starting to realize, we got to start preparing and start thinking about how to deal with things if there's major changes to cooperation compensation. So most of the conversation now is talking about, as an agent, how do you convince a buyer to pay you? How do you get agents to do exclusive buyer agency agreements? What should the best practices be for doing that? And I'm like, look, those are all wonderful topics. I'll probably address those as well. But the thing that we're not talking about is, as I like to say, those are tomorrow's problems. Mm-hmm. How to get buyers to pay your agents is tomorrow's problem. Today's problem, if you're a broker, is, are you going to be around where that's going to matter to you? Because the thing we don't talk about is the scale of damages involved in these cases. So when Realogy settled for $83 million, they got away super cheap, because what they said was their exposure just in the state of Missouri was $6.5 billion. So, I'm looking at this look, every one of these cases, what most people ignore is the fact that just because you are not named as a defendant does not mean you're out of the woods. Because just about every broker in Missouri has been identified as what's called a co-conspirator, which means that you can be brought into this lawsuit at any time. You can be brought in after the fact. And this is just stemming from that, the decisions that brokers have to make today are not the decisions that they're dealing with. So that's going to be my presentation. And we're going to go through some pretty dark stuff, some really oh my God, how come I've never knew about this stuff? But at the same time, I feel like you should, you're better to know and then think about how do you prepare for this versus not knowing and then being completely surprised. That's my goal for coming. That's been my message for the last 3 years. And I guess I'm glad that we're finally getting the chance to really surface some of these things.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, as you mentioned before, you have such a unique take, on this situation. You're not going to come in there and say it's all going to be fine and it's going to be great and it's going to be, this is serious. We're in a very serious situation. These allegations are very serious in the impact that it can have to potentially, change our world, forever is very serious. And there's a high chance that it is going to change in some capacity. And, we don't know what the outcome of these cases are. As you mentioned, the settlement did just happen. We don't know if we could see something like that happening with us or not. As you mentioned, we are going to be going to trial. If by the time this episode airs, we're not already starting trial. There's so much up in the air. And I think, we would be mistaken if we didn't start planning for this and what it could potentially mean. Do you think that people have been taking this too lightly, that there's been kind of oh yeah, there's these lawsuits and but it's going to be fine? What is your opinion? How are people kind of reacting to this? And are we just now hitting this moment where we're oh no, this is really, stuff's about to go down?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And part of it is, and one of the major kudos I have to give to Ohio Realtors is, I have to tell you, there's been almost this sort of concerted effort on the part of realtors, starting from NAR and then that being pushed down through the state and local ranks to, quote, not panic the troops, right? So NAR's messaging from day one has always been, we're right on the facts or right on the law, we're going to win, right? So naturally then, as realtor organizations, you just go, well, NAR's won every other lawsuit, right? They're going to win. Let's not worry about it. So I think that's been the mindset for a good 2 years, at least, right? I think that started to change a little bit when NAR kept losing. NAR lost the motion to dismiss. They lost the summary judgment motion. They lost the class certification motion. So with every defeat, it's like more and more people like, we might lose. Up until now, I didn't need to pay attention to this because NAR is very powerful. They have very good lawyers. They're going to win. With every step, it's like, maybe they're not going to win. Oh, maybe they're not going to win. So one of the things I found interesting, especially this year, is more realtor organizations and MLSs are starting to ask me to come speak to them and speak to their brokers. And I don't know why that would be seen as a controversial thing or why that would be seen as a negative, right? But it is something that I've noticed. And I've been sort of, agitating for a while. Hey, NAR, hey, realtor associations. I'm not saying you need to go and talk, do this at your main annual convention and freak out your agents. Because one of the really important takeaways here, the agents are not going to get sued. There's no scenario where the agent is going to have to pay some fine or pay some damages, right? There's no scenario. Agents are not going to have problems. Brokers, MLSs, realtor associations, franchisors, y'all got problems, right? And this is something that is not surfaced enough.
Yeah.
So I think it's good timing, and here's the thing. Frankly, Ohio Realtors specifically have invited me in the past where I would talk about these lawsuits in front of more people. So I feel like hopefully the broker audience that will be at Broker Summit is a little bit more educated than places where they really have done this, everything's gonna be fine, don't worry about it. Go back to selling houses. Everything's gonna be fine. But that's been one of the things. And I think finally this year, with a trial 6 weeks or 9 weeks out, I think more and more the industry is starting to realize, we better pay attention to this.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And you're right. This probably isn't going to be the first time that, our attendees at this conference or even our listeners, are hearing about this. But I think, as we were talking about, this is the first time that the real seriousness of this is sinking in, and the real hey, we can't put it off anymore, that everything is going to be okay. Because we really don't know. We're to this point now when, this could have a real major impact on the way that we do our work moving forward. And I think, we're having this conversation at a great time because all of our attendees, all of our members need to be up to speed on this. They need to, know what it means for them and their business. And as you mentioned, how to plan forward and what that future is going to look like. Yeah. So I think we're really, at a really good time to be having these conversations for sure.
Listen, I mean, like I said, I don't want to give away the whole presentation. It's an hour-long conversation with, potentially Q&A afterwards. But I will say this. If you are listening to this podcast, and again, I don't know exactly when this will air, and you are a brokerage owner, you should be calling your E&O insurance company right now and asking them about antitrust coverage. Because you have never thought about this until now. Chances are your insurance will not cover the cost of defense for antitrust claims, meaning they will not pay for the lawyers to defend you if you get sued as a brokerage. I can almost 100% guarantee the insurance will not cover damages. So there's some real consequences out of that. So all I can say is at a minimum, you should be calling your insurance company and asking them those questions.
100%. Step one, right?
Step one.
Get your insurance on the phone and talk to them about, the coverage that you have and what that's going to look like.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the question, hey, so if I get sued, a very similar thing that's happening with Sitzer and Merle, what's my coverage? It's shocking to me how few brokerage owners know that.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Shocking. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm like, hey, you need to call some people. There's some things you need to do right now. And I think this is just the flavor of the topics I have to cover. And it's not because I want to cover it. It's because we have to cover it.
Yeah.
Right. As a brokerage owner. Yeah.
Yeah. This is happening.
It's a matter of life and death. It's survival. It's really that important.
Yeah, this is happening now. We need to get ready. We need to be active with this. It's not a passive, we'll see what happens situation before. It's no. This is real and it's happening right now. This episode of The Real View is brought to you by the Ohio Association of Community Colleges. Ohio's network of community colleges provides accessible training that accommodates the busy lifestyles of aspiring real estate professionals at half the price of a traditional university. With convenient locations in every part of the state, as well as online options, Ohio's community colleges are your smart choice for pre-licensing education. For more details or to start the journey to a real estate career, visit the education page at ohiorealtors.org and then click on the pre-license course locations. If you had like a gut feeling on where you think that this, where this is going to head, the outcome of these cases, we all don't have a crystal ball. We all don't know, as you mentioned, how the jury's going to, react and respond to these cases. But from your perspective and your expertise and people you've talked to and, being so involved in the industry, what are you hearing and what are you seeing? What are you thinking as far as what, some of these outcomes are going to look like? What do you think the most likely outcome is going to be?
I think the most likely outcome is that in the Sitzer case, the NAR and at least 3 corporate defendants are going to lose. And we're going to lose that case, at least at trial. The question is whether we could win at the appellate level. So that's the expectation. Problem is, there's some real issues that come up long before the resolution. This is the other problem, right? So NAR has been sending out this message consistently. Hey, don't worry about it. It's going to take years to resolve. Because look, even if whoever loses at the trial level, they're going to appeal it and then we'll get a stay and the appellate process 3 to 5 years long. And if we lose there, we're going to appeal to the Supreme Court. So everyone's like, we got time. Don't worry about it. I don't know that that's the case. Because as just a simple matter, and I don't recall offhand how many markets in Ohio are part of the Murrow lawsuits. I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's like Cleveland, maybe, and Cincinnati. I think that's it.
Yeah, there's at least a couple. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Mm-hmm. So let's just say that Columbus, for example, is not a Murrow market. What that means is if I'm just some ambulance chasing lawyer in Columbus, I can bring my own lawsuit against Columbus, against the local realtor association, and I don't know, the 10 largest brokers in Columbus.
So everyone is kind of going to be left vulnerable by this.
And here's the thing, that lawsuit can be filed tomorrow because all those plaintiffs' lawyers know Realty just settled for $84 million. I wonder what the local large broker would settle for.
Yeah. Because we've all been doing things in this similar way that no one's Of course. No one's really immune to this.
Of course. And no one is talking about this. And like I said, too many brokers are sort of just watching this passively like, oh, wow, look at that. Realty just paid this much money. Oh, my God. Oh, I better go make some policy changes around exclusive buyer agency agreement. I'm like, what if you get sued next week because some ambulance chaser in your town saw the settlement with Realty and said, hey, there's some easy money to be made here. What are you going to do? So hopefully, because of this podcast, hopefully at the presentation, we're going to go through what are you going to do? And, maybe there's some things that you could be doing and should be thinking about right now.
Yeah.
That has literally nothing to do with exclusive buyer agency agreements. Because that's not the point.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
Not for brokers.
Yeah, definitely. And that was kind of going to be, my other question too on the timing of this all and kind of like what that looks like. And, as you mentioned, we have heard, this can take years and we all know, legal proceedings can, take a while and they can be very drawn out processes.
It could.
But, how quickly, if we do end up losing in a situation like this, how quickly, are we going to be expected to turn around and change the way that we've been doing business? I mean, from what, you've been saying, it sounds like we need to be prepared that if this happens, in the way that it does, end up with us losing the case, that we need to be prepared to turn on a very quick notice.
Yeah, because literally by like November, there could be a nationwide injunction against commission sharing. Now what?
Yeah. I mean, we're thinking like this is not that far down the road.
No, this is not far down the road. And, I think one of the issues is if you had been starting to prepare back in 2019 when these lawsuits were first filed, it's not clear that it would, there's a whole lot you could have done. But better late than never is almost how I see it. Me personally, like I have some friends who are big time like national company owners, and they've been preparing for this for 2 years. They've been making a contingency plan for 2 years. It doesn't mean they're going to be safe, doesn't mean anything, but it does mean at a minimum, you should start thinking about it today. Mm-hmm. And again, to me, I'm not trying to panic anybody. I'm really not. Right? I'm not trying to be like, we're definitely like the sky's like, no, it's just, like maybe 2, 3 years ago, I remember this was at Ohio. I remember coming talking about, hey, just as an industry, we might want to embrace a little bit more of the prepper mindset. Like, you should have 3 weeks of water. You should have 3 months of food. You should have extra fuel. It just, like, and you're not doing that because you want something bad to happen. You're not saying, I want hurricane to hit and then I have to drink the stored water. That's not what's going on. What's going on is I'm going to prepare just in case. Just in case. So again, I feel like the audience in Ohio is going to be a little bit more prepared, hopefully, than other states, simply because I've spoken there more often.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, look, the best time to prep is before a hurricane hits.
Yeah.
Right. That could have been 2 years ago, or it could have been 2 days. Right. But, you don't want to be out there trying to get generators, when the hurricane is on top of you.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the mindset. That's sort of the spirit that I think I want to bring to this.
Yeah. And we're not, like you mentioned, we're not trying to scare anybody, you know, but I think there is, it's wise to be aware of this and be planning for this and be thinking about, the future and what this is going to look like, because, I think regardless of what happens, with these cases that, our industry is going to change and it's going to be different. And, it might be for the better and it might be for the worse. And we're going to, see as things play out. But I think, no matter what, the change is inevitable and we need to be ready for it and we need to embrace it and know how to function through it, because it is here and it's going to happen and it's going to change. What do you think the biggest changes that are going to come out of this are? I mean, I know we're not going to know yet, but what does our future look like? I mean, are we still going to be in a good place? I know things are going to be a little bit different, but what are you thinking?
I'm thinking there's a really decent chance that residential real estate looks a whole lot like commercial real estate. And there's a really decent chance of that if all of the things kind of play out the way they might. So, I mean, I guess my main purpose behind my main message, if you will, is we're going to adapt. Real estate is very adaptable. Agents especially are very quick to adapt. Like when COVID happened and people were freaking out, like within 2 months, I know agents are setting up virtual tours on their cameras and drones. Like they're very creative. They're going to adapt. So we're going to adapt. We'll get past this. People are still going to buy and sell houses. We're not. The way I like to say is, look, we don't work. We work in real estate. We work in housing. We don't work for like luxury goods or NFTs, where people don't need, like, oh my God, there's all this change, so I'm going to stop buying. Like, no, you're going to buy houses. You're going to sell houses. You're going to rent places. It's going to, like, that is not going to change. We will adapt. My thing, though, is the adaptation is way easier if you have done some thinking about it, have prepared a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's great that brokers are thinking about things like exclusive buyer agency agreements. How am I going to train my agents to prove their value? It's great that you're thinking about it. You don't have to implement it today. Think about it. My point, though, is there's some other changes coming, other potential impact. At a minimum, you gotta do some research and think about it. Like I said earlier, at a minimum, you need to call your insurance company and find out what kind of coverage you have, because chances are you don't have any. And I think it would be way better to know that now, as opposed to getting sued by a lawyer and then calling your insurance company and be like, okay, so I just got sued. I need you to cover me. And the insurance company goes, yeah, we don't cover that. You know what I mean? Like, you're way better off knowing now. So that's the overall. The changes, though, could be, Allison, I mean, we're talking existential threat. I mean, this could be completely different. Mm-hmm. Like come 2025, we might all be like, oh my God, remember what residential real estate used to be like in 2023? I mean, it's that serious.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy to watch this all play out and see what happens. How often should we be keeping up and checking in on this? And how do you get all your information on this? And attending your session up and coming is going to be one of the ways, that we can stay up to date on the latest, going on with this. But what do you recommend as far as just getting there's so much out there, right?
So much out there.
Where should we go to get the best information on this? And how often should we kind of be checking in and keeping track of this?
Right. So I think my answer to that depends on your role in the industry. Mm-hmm. Here's what I mean. If you're an agent, you don't need to, just don't, go serve your clients. If you're a broker manager, like you manage a local office, maybe, just just be aware of it, do a little bit of prepping. But if you're like the broker owner, it's your company, I can't think of anything more important for you to focus on than this. So yeah, you probably want to stay very much on top of it. You probably want to start talking to your attorneys on a regular basis and be like, hey man, I need you to go follow these cases and give me updates. Obviously, like I'm out there talking about all the time. I have a Substack, I have a blog, essentially. I talk about this stuff all the time. Others in the industry are talking about it. Maybe it's not a bad idea to sort of put together like a weekly feed of like, here's all the news about the latest from the lawsuits. I don't know that. Look, I think it would be a phenomenal service personally for like Ohio Realtors to do this and send out like regular updates. Here's the latest. Here's the latest. The challenge there is you may be going against what NAR's narrative to date has been. So that's a whole separate conversation that maybe I could have with y'all when I'm there in person. That might be a real service, right? Just like the latest, without the cheerleading, without the happy talk. I feel like the brokerage owners and the leaders actually deserve the truth, the whole truth, even if it's ugly, even if it's bad. Because if you just keep feeding them like, rah, don't worry about it, we're going to win, and they don't prepare, that's probably a worse disservice in my mind.
Yeah.
So that's how I think about it. I think if you're a brokerage owner, you're in leadership, you probably want to pay attention to this like very closely. If you're not really in leadership, it's fine. If you're an agent, this is probably not something you have to seriously worry about. Your broker will tell you, hey, we need you to do these things. Just go do what you're good at, right? You service consumers, help them buy and sell houses. If you're management, then you just need to follow the direction of senior leadership. That's how I look at it. But if you're a senior leader, you absolutely have to pay attention to this and be on top of it.
Yep, definitely. As you mentioned, can't imagine what else there is to focus on right now other than this. I mean, this has got to be number one. This is literally going to change our world.
I think so. Like I said, this is a matter of survival, right? Because again, even as Ohio Realtors, if you guys are brought into some lawsuit for $6 billion in damages, what are you going to do? And so hopefully like some of your board members are listening to this podcast today. Y'all should probably have a meeting about that.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. No, now's the time, now's the time.
Yeah. Like 3 years ago was the time, but now's better than too late.
But now is really, really the time.
Exactly. It's kind of what they say about trees. Like the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best is now.
Yeah. AKA get on it.
Get on it.
Let's get these conversations happening in these plans in place. So what else are we going to get to hear? I know we talked a lot, about the basis of your presentation. Anything else that we can expect to be hearing from you in a couple weeks?
I don't have enough time for this one. Like, I think I only have an hour, and I feel like I have to cover this important topic. So unfortunately, like normally, like at previous, especially with like the larger convention itself, I like to try and mix up, like here's some tech stuff that's coming, here's some market trends, but here's demographics. I like to talk about, interesting topics. I think this one, unfortunately, because number one, it's the broker summit. And the message needs to go to brokers. So I'm going to really focus on this. And then we'll just sort of talk about some ideas and from a preparation standpoint.
Yeah, it's going to be really great. I mean, this is going to be a can't miss session. I know I'm going to be there. I can't wait to hear, all of the knowledge that you're going to share with us and ways to be prepared. We can't urge this enough that you need to make this a priority and you need to be working on this every day to plan for what's ahead. Yeah. So it's going to go down. It's going to go down.
Here's the thing. I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to have people tell me, no, you're overthinking this, that you're overreacting. That's awesome. That's really awesome because to me, a great outcome is you over-prepare and nothing happens.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Great. The worst possible outcome is you're unprepared and the worst possible outcome happens and you are literally out of business.
Yep.
Like, let's try and prevent that.
Yeah, we don't want any of our members being in that situation. That's for sure.
Correct. You don't want any of your members being surprised. You don't want to be entertained. What do you mean? I just got sued and what? Like, you don't want that. You want them to, oh, crap, like this is coming. Oh, it's happened. all right, pull out the contingency plan. What do we do now?
Yep.
Like, that's what you want.
Yep. I'm ready for it. Yep.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to try to place you guys.
That's right.
With all of this. So make sure to attend our broker summit. Make sure to attend Rob's session. He's kicking us off, I believe, right on Monday morning.
I think I am. Yeah.
So what a great way to kick us off with the most important thing, that we are all going to be thinking about. So we'll see you there, Rob, in a few weeks.
See you then.
Yes. Can't wait. And
looking forward to it.
Yes. Thanks so much for joining me. And we'll see you soon. And to all of our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.